Namaste, my beloved friends. There comes a moment in every seeker's life when the head becomes the greatest obstacle to the heart. And this is why Sant Kabir says to his followers, if you want to be my disciple, first you have to cut your head. Now please understand, Kabir is not talking about the physical head. Kabir is not teaching violence. Kabir is pointing toward the deepest inner surgery. He is saying, before you enter the temple of truth, first drop your ego. First drop your pride of knowledge. First drop your addiction to logic. First drop this illusion that your small intellect can measure the infinite. Because the divine is not understood by argument. The divine is not conquered by debate. The divine is not captured by cleverness. The divine is received only in surrender. Logic and intellectualism come under Mercury. Mercury is the planet of intelligence, speech, analysis, calculation, business, documents, communication, and reasoning. Mercury is very useful in the marketplace. Mercury helps you earn, speak, write, negotiate, calculate, and survive in this world. But the same Mercury, when it becomes arrogant, starts saying, I know everything. I can control everything. I can calculate even God. I will believe only what fits into my logic. And that is where the problem begins. So does this mean that we should totally reject intellect? No. The answer is beautifully given by Bhagavan Raman Maharshi. He quotes, the purpose of intellect is to realize its own dependence upon the higher power and its inability to reach the same. So it must annihilate itself before the goal is gained. This is a very deep statement. It means intellect is not useless. Intellect is a ladder. But the ladder is not the sky. Intellect can take you to the door, but it cannot become the door. Intellect can help you understand the scriptures, but it cannot give you God realization. Intellect can sharpen your discrimination, but finally, even that discrimination must bow down before the divine. The true purpose of intellect is not to become proud. The true purpose of intellect is to realize its own limitation. When Mercury is purified, it becomes wisdom. When Mercury is polluted by ego, it becomes argument. When Mercury bows down, it becomes mantra. When Mercury becomes arrogant, it becomes confusion. This reminds me of a beautiful quote by one of the greatest intellectual minds among the founding fathers of the United States, Benjamin Franklin. During the Constitutional Convention in 1787, he quotes, the longer I live, the more convincing proofs I see of this truth, that God governs in the affairs of men. And if a sparrow cannot fall to the ground without his notice, is it probable that an empire can rise without its aid? Just see the beauty. A great intellectual man, a man of science, politics, diplomacy, and worldly intelligence, finally comes to this conclusion that God governs the affairs of men. This is the maturity of Mercury. Immature Mercury argues with God. Mature Mercury bows before God. Immature intellect says, I will manage everything. Mature intellect says, I will do my karma, but the result belongs to him. That is why in our Hindu prayers we say, Tan, Man, Dhan, Arpan to God, to Prabhu. Tan means body, Man means mind, Dhan means wealth. I surrender my body, I surrender my mind, I surrender my wealth, I surrender my logic, I surrender my planning, I surrender my fear, I surrender my future. Everything belongs to your holy feet. And when this surrender happens, then life opens a secret door. Then you experience help from invisible hands. Then miracles begin to unfold. Then the same life which looked like a battlefield slowly becomes a temple. And I am revealing this insight today for a very specific reason. Because from 30th June to 24th July, Mercury will go retrograde. And whenever Mercury becomes retrograde, the mind becomes restless. Communication becomes disturbed. Documents get delayed. Legal matters become complicated. People misunderstand each other. Emotional decisions are taken. Messages are misread. Agreements are confused. Travel, technology, payments, paperwork, and professional communication can become messy. But remember this carefully. Mercury retrograde harms those who live only through the head. Those who are over calculating, those who are overthinking, overreacting, over speaking, and over controlling, they suffer more. But those who live with awareness, prayer, patience, and surrender, they pass through this phase with minimum damage. So before 30th June, complete your important documentation, complete your legal formalities, recheck your papers, back up your data, avoid impulsive commitments, do not sign anything blindly, do not speak in anger, do not make major emotional decisions just because your mind is disturbed. And most importantly, do not allow your logic to become your God. Use Mercury for practical life. Use intellect for clarity. Use logic for worldly duties. But when it comes to the higher journey, let Mercury bow down. Because the head can help you survive, but only the heart can help you surrender. The intellect can take you to the river bank, but only grace can take you across. So in this Mercury retrograde, my fellows, do not just protect your documents, protect your peace, protect your words, protect your decisions, protect your surrender. Let your intellect work, but let your soul lead. Because when Mercury bows before the divine, confusion becomes clarity, delay becomes protection, and even retrograde becomes a blessing in disguise. And now, after understanding this deeper truth that Mercury must be used but not worshipped, that intellect must function but finally surrender, let us understand how this Mercury retrograde, first in Cancer and then moving back into Gemini, will impact all the 12 signs. Because Mercury retrograde in Cancer will disturb emotions, family matters, inner security, memory, attachment, motherly wounds, and emotional decision making. Here, Mercury becomes like a sharp businessman sitting inside the house of feelings, and so logic becomes wet with emotions. And when Mercury retrograde back into Gemini, the disturbance shifts toward communication, documents, business decisions, travel, agreements, social media, siblings, networking, writing, speaking, and professional calculations. So listen carefully for your sign, not only to know what may happen, but to know where your intellect must bow down, where your speech must become prayer, and where your logic must become surrender. And during this entire Mercury retrograde period from 30th June to 24th July, every morning and every night before sleeping, sit calmly and chant the beautiful mantra, the one that I love the most. Om Govindaya Namaha. Om Govindaya Namaha. Om Govindaya Namaha. Chant this mantra 108 times, morning and in the night. Govinda is the divine intelligence behind all intelligence. Govinda is the protector of the mind, the guide of confused intellect, and the one who carries the devotee across the storm of wrong decisions. So when Mercury creates confusion, take refuge in Govinda. When the mind becomes restless, chant Govinda. When logic becomes tired, surrender to Govinda. And so now, let us begin with the predictions for each zodiac sign. And at the end of the podcast, as always, for all my close followers, there is an insightful story. So let's begin.
Aries, Mesh Rashi.
For Aries natives, Mercury retrograde will first happen in Cancer, your fourth house of home, mother, property, vehicle, and inner peace. So be careful in family matters. Avoid emotional arguments at home. Recheck property papers, vehicle documents, rent agreements, home loan matters, and any domestic legal formalities. Do not take major decisions from emotional disturbance. Spiritually, this transit is saying your real home is not outside, your real home is within. So protect your inner peace first. Then Mercury will retrograde back into Gemini, your third house of communication, siblings, short travel, business efforts, writing, speaking, and social media. Here, you must be careful with messages, emails, phone calls, agreements, and public statements. Avoid misunderstandings with siblings and close friends. Old clients, old ideas, or old projects may come back for correction. So for Aries, the message is simple. Do not react, recheck, revise, and then respond. And during the entire Mercury retrograde period, chant Om Govindaya Namaha, Om Govindaya Namaha, Om Govindaya Namaha, 108 times in the morning and 108 times before sleeping at night. Let Mercury do the work, but let Govinda guide the mind.
Taurus, Vrushab Rashi.
For Taurus natives, Mercury retrograde will first happen in Cancer, your third house of communication, siblings, short travel, courage, writing, speaking, business efforts, and social media. So be very careful with your words. Avoid emotional messages, unnecessary explanations, and impulsive promises. Misunderstandings with siblings, neighbors, friends, or close contacts is possible. Short travels, documents, emails, phone calls, and online communication need extra care. Spiritually, this transit is saying your speech should not come from hurt. Your speech should come from awareness. Because once words leave the mouth, they become karma. Then Mercury will retrograde back into Gemini, your second house of money, family, savings, food habits, speech, and values. Here, Taurus natives must be very careful in financial decisions. Avoid careless spending, risky investments, emotional shopping, and verbal commitments related to money. Family discussions may become sensitive, so speak softly and do not allow logic to become harshness. Old payments, pending dues, family money matters, or taxation related work may come back for correction. So, for Taurus, the message is simple: protect your words, protect your wealth, and protect your peace. And during the entire Mercury retrograde period, chant this beautiful mantra: Om Govindaya Namaha, Om Govindaya Namaha, 108 times in the morning and 108 times in the night before going to sleep. Let Mercury handle your speech and money, but let Govinda protect your wisdom.
Gemini, Mithun Rashi.
For Gemini natives, Mercury retrograde will first happen in Cancer, your second house of money, family, savings, speech, food habits, and values. So be careful in financial matters. Avoid emotional spending, risky investments, careless promises, and family arguments related to money. Your speech can become more sensitive during this time, so do not speak from hurt, fear, or insecurity. Spiritually, this transit is saying wealth is protected not only by calculation but by calmness and contentment. Because when the mind is disturbed, even intelligent people make foolish financial decisions. Then Mercury will retrograde back into Gemini, your first house of self, personality, health, identity, confidence, decision making, and mental clarity. This is very important because Mercury is your own sign lord. So you may feel more confused, restless, overthinking, or mentally scattered. Avoid changing your image, career direction, relationship decisions, or major life plans impulsively. Take care of your nervous system, sleep, skin, digestion, and anxiety levels. Do not over explain yourself to everyone. Old ideas, old plans, and old versions of yourself may come back for review. So, for Gemini, the message is simple: do not lose yourself in your own thoughts. Pause, pray, and then decide. And during the entire Mercury retrograde period, chant this beautiful mantra: Om Govindaya Namaha, Om Govindaya Namaha, 108 times in the morning and 108 times before sleeping at night. Let Mercury sharpen your mind, but let Govinda steady your soul.
Cancer, Kark Rashi.
For Cancer natives, Mercury retrograde will first happen in Cancer, your first house of self, personality, health, confidence, identity, and decision making. So, this is a very sensitive phase for you. Your mind may become restless, emotional, and overthinking. You may question yourself, your decisions, your relationships, and your direction in life. Avoid impulsive choices, emotional reactions, and sudden changes in appearance, work, or personal life. Spiritually, this transit is saying do not believe every emotion that rises within you. watch it, witness it, and surrender it. Because every feeling is not divine guidance. Sometimes it is only old fear speaking. Then Mercury will retrograde back into Gemini, your 12th house of sleep, expenses, foreign connections, isolation, subconscious mind, hospitals, losses, and spiritual retreat. Here you must be careful with expenses, online payments, foreign documents, travel plans, and hidden worries. Sleep may get disturbed and the mind may revisit old memories. But spiritually, this can become a powerful time for mantra, meditation, silence, and inner cleansing. So, for Cancer, the message is simple: do not drown in emotions, turn inward, and let surrender become your protection. And during the entire Mercury retrograde period, chant this beautiful mantra: Om Govindaya Namaha, Om Govindaya Namaha, Om Govindaya Namaha. 108 times in the morning and 108 times in the night before sleeping. You should chant this mantra. Let Mercury calm your emotions, but let Govinda carry your heart.
लियो सिंह राशि।
For Leo natives, Mercury retrograde will first happen in Cancer, your 12th house of sleep, expenses, foreign matters, isolation, hospitals, losses, subconscious mind, and spiritual retreat. So be careful with unnecessary expenses, online payments, foreign documents, travel plans, and hidden worries. Sleep may become disturbed, and old memories or past fears may come back. Avoid overthinking in silence, because sometimes the mind creates problems that do not even exist. Spiritually, this transit is saying when the outer world becomes confusing, go inward, because silence will protect you more than argument. Then Mercury will retrograde back into Gemini, your 11th house of gains, income, networking, friends, audience, followers, elder siblings, and fulfillment of desires. Here, old friends, old clients, old contacts, or old income opportunities may return. But be careful in financial promises, group discussions, collaborations, and social media communication. Do not trust every opportunity blindly. Recheck before committing. So for Leo, the message is simple: control expenses, protect sleep, and choose your circle wisely. And during the entire Mercury retrograde period, chant this beautiful mantra: Om Govindaya Namaha, Om Govindaya Namaha, Om Govindaya Namaha. 108 times chant this mantra in the morning and in the night before sleeping. Let Mercury manage your networks and gains, but let Govinda protect your peace and direction.
वर्गो कन्या राशि।
For Virgo natives, Mercury retrograde will first happen in Cancer, your 11th house of gains, income, friends, networking, elder siblings, audience, followers, and fulfillment of desires. So be careful in money expectations, professional networking, collaborations, and promises made by friends or clients. Old contacts, old opportunities, or pending payments may return, but do not trust everything immediately. Recheck before saying yes. Spiritually, this transit is saying every gain is not a blessing and every delay is not a loss. Sometimes God delays what your intellect is rushing toward. And then Mercury will retrograde back into Gemini, your 10th house of career, karma, profession, reputation, authority, business, and public image. Here, you must be very careful in workplace communication, emails, meetings, presentations, contracts, and commitments with seniors or clients. Avoid changing jobs, business direction, or public statements impulsively. Old work, old responsibilities, or old professional mistakes may come back for correction. So, for Virgo, the message is simple: do not rush for gains and do not react in career matters. Review, refine, and surrender. And during the entire Mercury retrograde period, chant this beautiful mantra: Om Govindaya Namaha. Om Govindaya Namaha. 108 times in the morning and 108 times before sleeping at night. Let Mercury guide your work, but let Govinda protect your karma and reputation.
Libra, Tula Rashi.
For Libra natives, Mercury retrograde will first happen in Cancer, your 10th house of career, karma, profession, business, reputation, authority, and public image. So be careful in workplace communication, meetings, emails, contracts, presentations, and commitments with seniors, clients, or government authorities. Do not react emotionally in professional matters because one wrong word can affect your image. Spiritually, this transit is saying your career is not only your effort, it is also your karma. So do your duty but surrender the result. And then Mercury will retrograde back into Gemini, your 9th house of luck, dharma, guru, higher learning, father, long distance travel, legal matters, and blessings. Here you must be careful with travel plans, visa matters, legal documents, higher studies, and communication with teachers, mentors, or father like figures. Old spiritual lessons may return, and old karmic patterns may ask for correction. So, for Libra, the message is simple: protect your reputation, respect your dharma, and do not let logic fight with grace. And during the entire Mercury retrograde period, chant this beautiful mantra: Om Govindaya Namaha. Om Govindaya Namaha. Om Govindaya Namaha. 108 times in the morning and 108 times in the night before going to bed. Chant this mantra. Let Mercury guide your karma, but let Govinda protect your destiny.
Scorpio, Vrushchik Rashi.
For Scorpio natives, Mercury retrograde will first happen in Cancer, your 9th house of luck, dharma, guru, father, higher learning, long distance travel, legal matters, and divine blessings. So be careful with travel plans, visa matters, legal documents, higher studies, and communication with teachers, mentors, or father like figures. Do not question your faith just because a few things are delayed. Spiritually, this transit is saying when logic becomes tired, faith must become stronger. Sometimes God delays the journey only to protect the traveler. And then Mercury will retrograde back into Gemini, your 8th house of sudden events, secrets, research, transformation, inheritance, joint finances, occult, healing, and hidden fears. Here you must be extra careful with loans, taxes, insurance, partners' money, confidential matters, and emotional reactions. Avoid digging too much into suspicion because the mind may create unnecessary fear. But for spiritual practice, astrology, mantra, tantra, healing, and inner transformation, this can be a powerful period. So for Scorpio, the message is simple. Do not let fear control your faith. Go deeper, but do not become darker. And during the entire Mercury retrograde period, chant this beautiful mantra. Om Govindaya Namaha. Om Govindaya Namaha. Om Govindaya Namaha. 108 times in the morning and 108 times before sleeping at night. Let Mercury reveal hidden truths, but let Govinda protect your faith and inner strength.
Sagittarius, Dhanu Rashi.
For Sagittarius natives, Mercury retrograde will first happen in Cancer, your 8th house of sudden events, secrets, loans, taxes, insurance, joint finances, inheritance, research, occult, and inner transformation. So be careful with financial documents, loan papers, taxation, insurance, partners' money, and confidential matters. Do not take sudden decisions out of fear or suspicion. Hidden issues may come up, but they are coming up for correction, not for panic. Spiritually, this transit is saying, do not fear what is hidden. Sometimes darkness appears only because God wants you to discover your inner light. Then Mercury will retrograde back into Gemini, your 7th house of marriage, partnerships, clients, business agreements, and public dealings. Here, you must be very careful in relationships and business partnerships. Misunderstandings with spouse, partner, clients, or associates are possible. Avoid harsh words, emotional contracts, and impulsive commitments. Old clients, old relationship issues, or old partnership matters may return. So for Sagittarius, the message is simple. Do not react from fear and do not speak from ego. Listen carefully, recheck everything, and surrender the outcome. And during the entire Mercury retrograde period, chant this beautiful mantra. Om Govindaya Namaha. Om Govindaya Namaha. Om Govindaya Namaha. Chant this mantra 108 times morning and in the night. Let Mercury manage your partnerships, but let Govinda protect your trust, wisdom, and destiny.
Capricorn, Makar Rashi.
For Capricorn natives, Mercury retrograde will first happen in Cancer, your 7th house of marriage, relationships, partnerships, clients, business agreements, and public dealings. So be careful in one-to-one communication. Misunderstandings with spouse, partner, clients, or business associates are possible. Do not make emotional promises. Do not sign agreements blindly. And do not react strongly in relationships. Spiritually, this transit is saying a relationship is not saved by logic alone. It is saved by patience, listening, and surrender. Then Mercury will retrograde back into Gemini, your 6th house of job, health, debts, disputes, competition, service, enemies, and daily routine. Here you must be careful with workplace communication, office politics, legal disputes, loan matters, and health related negligence. Recheck medical reports, bills, documents, and commitments. Old conflicts or pending work may come back for resolution. So, for Capricorn, the message is simple. Do not fight every battle. Choose peace, choose discipline, and let time reveal the truth. And during the entire Mercury retrograde period, chant this beautiful mantra. Om Govindaya Namaha. Om Govindaya Namaha. 108 times in the morning and 108 times during the night before sleeping. Let Mercury handle your duties and relationships, but let Govinda protect your peace, health, and wisdom.
Aquarius, Kumbh Rashi.
For Aquarius natives, Mercury retrograde will first happen in Cancer, your sixth house of job, health, debts, disputes, competition, enemies, service, and daily routine. So be careful in workplace communication, office politics, legal matters, loans, bills, and health related documents. Do not argue unnecessarily with colleagues, employees, or service providers. Recheck medical reports, payments, agreements, and daily commitments. Spiritually, this transit is saying every problem is not an enemy. Sometimes it is God's way of teaching discipline. Then Mercury will retrograde back into Gemini, your fifth house of children, education, creativity, love, intelligence, speculation, and past life punya. Here you must be careful in romantic communication, children's matters, studies, creative projects, and risky investments. Avoid gambling with money or emotions. Old love issues, old creative ideas, or old educational plans may return for correction. So, for Aquarius, the message is simple. Do not overthink problems and do not misuse intelligence. Let your mind become prayer, not pressure. And during the entire Mercury retrograde period, chant this beautiful mantra, especially if you are seeking a good job or if you are seeking a marriage partner. Om Govindaya Namaha. Om Govindaya Namaha. Chant this mantra 108 times in the morning and 108 times before sleeping. Let Mercury handle your work and intelligence, but let Govinda protect your health and inner clarity.
Pisces, Meen Rashi.
For Pisces natives, Mercury retrograde will first happen in Cancer, your fifth house of children, education, love, creativity, intelligence, mantra, speculation, and past life punya. So be careful in romantic communication, children's matters, studies, creative decisions, and investments. Do not take emotional risks in love or money. Old love issues, old creative ideas, or old educational plans may return for correction. Spiritually, this transit is saying intelligence becomes divine only when it is guided by devotion. Otherwise, the same intelligence becomes confusion. And then Mercury will retrograde back into Gemini, your fourth house of home, mother, property, vehicle, emotional peace, and inner security. Here you must be careful in family matters, property documents, vehicle papers, rent agreements, home loan issues, and domestic conversations. Avoid emotional arguments at home. Do not allow old memories or family wounds to disturb your peace. So, for Pisces, the message is simple. Protect your heart, protect your home, and do not let emotions overpower your wisdom. And during the entire Mercury retrograde period, chant this beautiful mantra, Om Govindaya Namaha, Om Govindaya Namaha, Om Govindaya Namaha. Chant this mantra 108 times in the morning and 108 times before sleeping. Let Mercury guide your intelligence and home matters, but let Govinda protect your heart, peace and devotion. And before I conclude, I want to share a beautiful story with you all. Story of Bodhidharma. Because this story carries the entire essence of what I have been trying to say today. That intellect is useful, but finally it must bow down before surrender. Bodhidharma was the first enlightened man to reach China. Bodhidharma got initiated by a woman who was enlightened herself. Her name was Pragyatara. Perhaps people would have forgotten her name. It is only because of Bodhidharma that her name still remains. But only the name, we don't know anything else about her. It was she who offered Bodhidharma to go to China. Although there were 2 million Buddhist monks in China, Bodhidharma could find only 4 worthy to be accepted as his disciples. He was really very choosy. It took him almost 9 years to find his first disciple, Huiko. For 9 years, he sat before the temple wall, facing the wall. He made it a great meditation. He would just simply go on looking at the wall. Now, looking at the wall for a long time, you cannot think. Slowly, just like the wall, your mind screen also becomes empty. And there was a second reason. He declared, unless somebody who deserves to be my disciple comes, I will not look at the audience. People used to come and they would sit behind him. It was a strange situation. Nobody had spoken in this way. He would speak to the wall. People would be sitting behind him and he would not face the audience because he said, the audience hurts me more because it is just like a wall. Nobody understands, and to look at human beings in such an ignorant state hurts deeply. But to look at the wall, there is no question. A wall, after all, is a wall. It cannot hear, so there is no need to be hurt. I will turn to face the audience only if somebody proves by his action that he is ready to be my disciple. 9 years passed. People could not find what to do. What action would satisfy him? They could not figure it out. Then came this young man, Huiko. He cut off one of his hand with the sword and threw the hand before Bodhidharma and said, this is the beginning. Either you turn or my head will be falling before you. I am going to cut my head too. Bodhidharma turned and said, you are really a man worthy of me. No need to cut the head. We have to use it. This man, Huiko, was his first disciple. Finally, when he left China or intended to leave China, he called his 4 disciples. 3 more he had gathered after Huiko. He asked them in simple words, in small sentences, telegraphic, tell me the essence of my teachings. I intend to leave tomorrow morning to go back to the Himalayas, and I want to choose from you 4, one as my successor. The first man said, your teaching is of going beyond mind, of being absolutely silent, and then everything starts happening of its own accord. Bodhidharma said, you are not wrong, but you don't satisfy me. You just have my skin. The second one said, to know that I am not and only existence is your fundamental teaching. Bodhidharma said, a little better, but not up to my standard. You have my bones. Sit down. And the third one said, nothing can be said about it. No word is capable of saying anything about it. Bodhidharma said, good, but you have already said it. You have contradicted yourself. Just sit down. You have my marrow. And the fourth was his first disciple, Huiko, who simply fell at Bodhidharma's feet without saying a word, tears rolling down from his eyes. Bodhidharma said, you have said it. You are going to be my successor. And this is the final message of Mercury Retrograde. The first disciple had words. The second disciple had philosophy. The third disciple had silence as a concept. But Huiko had surrender. And that is why he received the transmission. So during this Mercury retrograde, do not become a victim of your own mind. Do not let logic become arrogance. Do not let speech become karma. Do not let overthinking disturb your peace. Use Mercury for your work, your documents, your business, your communication. But when confusion begins, bow down. Chant Om Govindaya Namaha. Om Govindaya Namaha. 108 times in the morning and 108 times before sleeping at night. Let the head work in the world, but let the heart surrender to God. Because finally, the truth is not given to the clever. The truth is given to the surrendered. And in the end, remember this simple prayer. Govinda Hare, Gopal Hare, He Prabhu Deen Dayal Hare. Meaning, O Govinda, O Gopal, please remove my suffering. O Lord, compassionate protector of the helpless, please take me into your grace. So when Mercury disturbs the mind, chant Govinda. When logic becomes tired, chant Gopal. When life feels heavy, remember Deen Dayal. Because the Lord who protects the helpless will never abandon the heart that surrenders. Always remember, the ultimate message of spiritual journey or the ultimate essence of spirituality is to come to the state of surrender. Jai Sri Ganesha, Jai Guru.
ॐ गं गणपतये नमः। ॐ गं गणपतये नमः। ॐ गं गणपतये नमः।